Claire Morrison had always been the kind of woman who opened doors before she checked who was knocking. It was the thing her husband Ryan loved most about her, and the thing that worried him most about her, and the thing that ultimately led to a Tuesday morning when she sat across a detective's desk in a Portland police station and heard a sentence she was not prepared for. The woman you have been caring for 4 months does not have cancer. She never did. Her name is not Ashley Reed. And you are the 7th person she has done this to. Claire sat in that chair and looked at the detective and felt something move through her that was not quite anger and not quite grief, but something that lived between the two. The specific devastation of someone who has loved a lie completely and now has to decide what to do with all that love. Claire and Ryan Morrison had been married for 3 years and lived in a craftsman house in Portland's Selwood neighborhood, with a garden Claire tended obsessively and a spare bedroom that had been painted and repainted twice while they decided what it was for. Claire worked as a pediatric occupational therapist. Ryan ran a small architecture firm from a studio downtown. They were the kind of couple who hosted dinner parties on Friday nights and remembered everyone's birthdays and dropped off food when a neighbor was sick. They had met Ashley at their neighbor's block party in July. A woman in her early 30s with warm blue eyes and a laugh that arrived before it was expected, the kind of laugh that makes a room feel safer. She had said she was new to the neighborhood, was between places, was dealing with some health things she did not want to go into. Claire had said, "We have a spare bedroom." Ryan had said, Claire had said, "We have a spare bedroom." Ashley moved in on a Saturday with 2 bags and a gratitude that felt enormous and genuine. Within 2 weeks, she had told them about the diagnosis. Stage 3. Treatable, but aggressive. She had said it quietly at the kitchen table with her hands folded and her eyes steady in a way that Claire would later think about very differently. Claire had cried. Ryan had driven Ashley to what he believed were chemotherapy appointments at a clinic across town. Claire had organized a fundraiser through her network that raised $14,000 for Ashley's treatment costs. She had held Ashley's hand through what appeared to be bad nights, nausea, exhaustion, the particular fragility of someone whose body was fighting something larger than itself. She had canceled 2 work trips. She had learned Ashley's supposed medication schedule. She had loved her with the full force of a woman who had loved to give and a spare bedroom, and no reason yet to doubt a single word she had been told. It was Ryan who first noticed the inconsistencies. Not because he was suspicious by nature, but because he was an architect and architects notice when things do not align. The clinic Ashley was driven to had no record of her as a patient. The specialist she had mentioned did not exist at the hospital she named. The medication bottles in the bathroom cabinet were empty, but had never been filled at any pharmacy in Portland. He did not tell Claire immediately because he needed to be certain. He spent 3 days verifying quietly and carefully, and with the growing dread of someone who already knows the answer before the last piece confirms it. When he told Claire on a Thursday evening in the kitchen, she looked at him for a long time without speaking. Then she went upstairs, knocked on the spare bedroom door, and asked Ashley if they could talk. Ashley was not there. Her 2 bags were gone. The room was clean and empty, and the bed had been made with a precision that felt deliberate, the way when you know you are not coming back. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from right now. And if you are new here, subscribe to Tales of Us so you never miss a story. Detective Sarah Banks had a file on Ashley Reed that was 47 pages long. She spread it across the desk in front of Claire and Ryan and walked them through it methodically. 7 families in 5 states over 9 years. Always the same pattern. A sympathetic entry, a terminal diagnosis revealed gradually, fundraisers, extended stays, and then a quiet disappearance before anything could be verified. The names changed. The illness changed. The cities changed. What never changed was the entry point. Always a woman like Claire. Always someone whose first instinct was to open the door. Detective Banks said Ashley's real name was Melissa Carr. She had grown up in the foster system in Ohio, had aged out at 18 with no family and no anchor, and had spent the following years building temporary ones through the only method that had ever worked, manufacturing a need so urgent and so visible that the love she was seeking arrived before anyone thought to ask questions. She was not a sociopath. She was not motivated by money, though she took it. She was, in the detective's words, the loneliest person she had investigated in 14 years on the force. Claire sat with that for a long time. Then she asked, "Where is she now?" They found Melissa 3 weeks later through a mutual connection. She had surfaced in Seattle, was living in a shelter, had not yet found her next entry point. Claire drove to Seattle alone. Ryan did not try to stop her because he knew her well enough to know that this was something she needed to do entirely on her own terms. She found Melissa at a coffee shop near the shelter and sat across from her and watched the woman's face move through recognition and shame and the particular collapse of someone who has been found. Before they were ready, Claire did not accuse her. She did not demand the money back. She put both hands flat on the table and said, "I know who you are. I know what you did, and I need you to hear something." She told Melissa that what she had done was a betrayal that had cost Claire something real, not just the money but the specific trust of someone who had chosen to love without checking. She said that trust was not gone, but it had been changed permanently. Then she said, "And I am telling you this because I think someone needs to tell you the truth about yourself before you disappear into the next city. You are worth being loved for who you actually are, not for a diagnosis, not for a story, just for yourself." Melissa looked at her across that coffee shop table and did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Nobody has ever said that to me." Claire said, "I know. That's why I drove to Seattle." Melissa Carr entered a residential support program in Seattle for adults with complex trauma histories in November. Claire had not arranged it and had not paid for it. A social worker at the shelter had made the referral after Melissa had, for the first time, told someone her real name and her real story. Claire found out through Detective Banks, who called her on a Wednesday morning to pass along the information. She sat in her kitchen with the phone in her hand for a while after the call ended. Then she went out to her garden and did what she always did when something large needed to be processed without words. Ryan brought her coffee 20 minutes later and sat on the garden steps beside her and did not ask any questions. After a while, Claire said, "I still don't know if I did the right thing by going to Seattle." Ryan said, "You went because it was true to who you are." Claire looked at her garden and said, "I know. I just hope it was true to what she needed to." They sat there until the coffee went cold. Some endings do not arrive with certainty. Some of them just arrive with the quiet hope that the truth you told landed somewhere it could eventually grow. Claire Morrison opened a door without checking who was knocking and paid a price for it that was real and lasting. But she also drove to Seattle and said something to a woman that nobody had ever said to her before. Whether that changed Melissa Carr's life permanently is something we will never fully know. What we do know is that Claire chose to respond to betrayal not with war and not with silence, but with the one thing that had defined her from the beginning: the belief that people are worth more than their worst decisions. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you love completely and had to decide whether to respond with anger or with something harder and more honest? Would you have driven to Seattle? Tell us in the comments. And if this story made you think about someone in your life who might be carrying something heavier than they are showing, share it with them today. Subscribe to Tales of Us, a Tales of Us production. We will see you in the next chapter.